So we're really getting into things now. So I'm looking at, how they select the juries. Turns out the police are checking people out for juries quite a lot. The juries are meant to be chosen at random from the electoral register to judge a criminal case. Now, there's some evidence that from Magna Carta and through the statute laws, I'm just looking into it now, but it's saying that all jurors are justices of the peace, right? If they are equal to justices of the peace, then really the law should apply to them the same as justices of the peace. There used to be a permanent position of jurat once they were sworn in, but now they get discharged and we choose them at random. Now, I've got something to say on that in a minute about the random selection of jurors for each case, right? It's got some serious matters to do with the local council, really, but I'll get into that in a minute. So, here, right, it claims that from 1700 to 1712, certain jurats were elected to be justices of the peace, right, for the coming year. But in 1712, it claims, this is from the minute books in the National Archives. This is from the minute books of the court records. I've still got to confirm this because I've read the charter of I've read the charters of James I, and I can't find this in there, so it'll need checking. I've confirmed that the recorder is a justice of the peace, the mayor is a justice of the peace or equal to them, and the aldermen are justices of the peace, right? So the mayor, the aldermen, and the recorder are all equal to justices of the peace. I also read that once the mayor is the mayor, once a new mayor is elected, or aldermen, they become justices of the peace permanently. The alderman, the recorder, and the mayor, even if a new alderman, a new mayor, or recorder is elected, the old ones remain justices of the peace. That is what it says in the chart, through the various charters when you update with them, right? It says that the practice of electing certain jurats were elected to be justices of the peace. This practice was discontinued with the note that according to the Charter of James I, all the jurats were automatically justices. So, I don't know if we can wrap his head around that. So, if all the jurats were automatically justices of the peace, they didn't need to be elected as them, but they could sit as them then, but they didn't need to be elected as them. So that means they could serve as a justice of the peace without being elected to be one if they needed a justice of the peace. So they could just act as a justice of the peace. This is in the hundreds in the local areas, though. Because in the cities, you had the mayor and the alderman and the recorder. In the hundreds, you didn't necessarily have the mayor there. Hold on a minute. Here, right, it's saying, so this is in modern law, right? Apparently there are two ways you can challenge the jury, right? You can challenge the jury, right? You can challenge the whole array of the jury. A challenge to the array is defined as a challenge that seeks to disqualify an entire jury panel assembled up until that current point. It's saying that if you do claim, it's saying that it's an ancient practice or an old practice and it's more for tradition. But I can't see that, because if it was an ancient practice and tradition, the Jurats had a lifelong elected position. They didn't have different Jurats. They didn't select them at random from the register. In fact, they were elected into position for life, right? It wasn't like different ones each time, because choosing them at random is you're actually not the citizens that are selecting them. It's like a random selection that selected them, not actually the people. So the people aren't having a preference. Traditionally, the people have got a preference amongst the people who the Jurats are going to be, whether they're trusted or not. If you use the electoral register system where you select completely at random, then you're selecting them randomly. There is no preference. There is actually randomness. But what actually the police do is the police and the courts are getting criminal checks or record checks on the selected jury, whether they're suitable or not, in secret, right? I think that the police have been omitting all drivers who have had any speeding points from being jurors. Not that you would get a fair trial in front of a jury anyway, because they completely removed them from magistrates' courts in the mid-1800s before we were driving anyway. And you only go to a Crown Court if it's a serious offence. So there weren't any juries. Since we've had driving offences, there haven't been any jury in the magistrates' court. Even if you were to get a jury in the magistrates' court, you see, my first ever letter through from the police, I didn't have anything to do with the police as a child growing up until I started driving. And then, you get this letter through, "Oh, you've been a naughty boy." And I'm like, where, when? Well, me? And, there was no red light. It didn't exist. I never drove through a red light. The light wasn't at red. It was a complete and total absolute fabrication. They sent a letter out to me, which was fabricated, saying you did this at this event and this time, when the incident did not exist. It never happened. No incident happened. No traffic light went to red. I did not drive through a red light. No red light existed in front of me on that occasion at that location. It was a work of fiction on paper, in writing. It was an absolute and complete fictional work of the police officer of Lancashire. Well, it might have been Greater Manchester in Oldham, right, at bottom of the moor, right? And in later years, when I went back to inspect that site, that site was set up unlawfully with an illegal road sign obstructing the traffic light, which it had been there all the time, because you can inspect the street furniture and you can tell how long they've been there for, right? That this was one of the proper strategic plantations. So that site was unlawfully set up. Whoever placed it, the councillors, and whoever evaluated the enforcement camera, the police, did so unlawfully. So another thing in those old charters is that it's clear now that any citizen in the law, any citizen is equal to any sheriff, mayor, alderman, recorder, any other serving or elected person, except for the MP, because they're under the authority of Parliament, right? The MP. Any of the other officials, the local ones, you and me can accuse them of an offence, and report them in, and they can be judged by the local people, right? I'm not too sure about the councillors. Oh no, the mayor. Yeah, the mayor's on the council, isn't he? So the mayor can, yeah. So I thought that because it's in the chamber of the council with the mace, it's the authority of the king. But the thing is that there's something to. A lot of the council work was being done by the courts, civil cases, right? We'll get onto that in a minute. I want to get onto the councillors in a minute separately, right? So you can challenge the jury. You can challenge them on different points. You can either challenge the whole panel, or you can challenge an individual, right? But it's saying you've got to challenge them. If you want to challenge them, it says you've got to challenge them before they are sworn in, right? But this is the thing. Traditionally, in history, Jurats are already sworn in when they turn up because they already are Jurats. The Jurats are already sworn in, right? So when you turn up in court, how can you challenge them before they're sworn in when they're permanently sworn in, like the judge, right? So how can you challenge them before they're sworn in? You know, what you do is, who would vote them in? They're all voted in by the people, right? That means that regardless of their crimes or offences, the people could choose to vote for who they want. You know, out of the village, right? You can vote for who you want the Jurats to be. And the thing is that the Jurats themselves can acquit people or convict people purely on, it can be on points of law or purely on their own opinion in disregard to the law, right? Now, the thing is, so that's an interesting thing. Why does it matter whether or not you challenge the jury before or after they're sworn in? If traditionally they're already sworn in when they turn up, right? And another thing is this: if according to this, right? If according to this, the jury are equal to the judge, why can't you challenge the judge? Now, obviously, the judge is already sworn in when he turns up, right? But if juries are equal to the judge, then you can challenge the judge as well as a jury, right? But they're making it sound like, oh, once you can challenge the jury before they're sworn in, but if you challenge them after they're sworn in, you can't do that. But the jury have always been sworn in when they turn up, same as the judge. In fact, that other thing says they're equal to judges, right? The thing is, how about I was sworn in at Cubs, right? So, and that's when I'm a kid. So they'll have a hard time accusing me of anything before I'm sworn in, because I was sworn in before I even got a driving license, and I never broke the law anyway. I never broke the law. I was a law abiding. So as far as I can gather, unless we all get misled by Mischief Night. What is that Mischief Night even about anyway, Can you imagine, do you think the government are trying to encourage children to break the law by having Mischief Night and it officially being recognised? Could that be possibly trying to entice young children to break the law, do you think? Maybe we could prosecute them for having it. Intent to provoke people into law breaking. So, there's a few other things here, right? In some circumstances, the parties to the case can challenge the empanelment of a juror through standby or challenge to the cause. Full details of which are set out in this document. However, the jury be subject to cause should only be stated. So, requires trial by an indictment an impartial tribunal. The general principles are members of a jury should be selected at random from the panel. Members of a jury should be selected at random from the panel, subject to any rule of law as to right of challenge. The Juries Act defines those classes as a person who alone are disqualified from or ineligible for service in a jury. No other class of persons may be treated as disqualified or ineligible. The correct way for the Crown to seek to exclude a member from the panel from sitting in juries by the exercising open court with the right to request standby or challenge. Parliament has proved a safeguard against jurors who may be corrupt or biased by, as the Juries Act makes it criminal an offence for a disqualified person to serve as a juror. Well, how are they disqualifying people? Right, so I think they're disqualifying people by coercing people to break the law or through entrapment. What I think they're doing is they're setting up a lot of these speeding traps and misleading people through entrapment when no one broke the law or they were misled into the law. The thing is, right, if you have got a location and that location to be enforceable must be lawfully signed and it's not, and the person who unlawfully signed it is a member of the government, the council, and the person who was supposed to check it and who is enforcing the law there is a police officer, and they were supposed to check it to make sure it was lawfully signed, and unlawful signs are misleading, then all the people that they catch there, regardless of whether they broke the law or didn't break the law, the signs are misleading, right? So they're misleading people. So the police officer is a criminal. So any of the offences that he captures at that site are illegally caught because so that police officer can be prosecuted and challenged by any citizen, as much as the mayor or aldermen, recorders, anyone, right? Councillors. That police officer can legally be challenged of an offence, right? And the thing is, what they're actually doing, I think, is they're striking people off juries or being eligible for juries because of criminal records. Now, the thing is, you don't have a jury in magistrates' court anyway, but for Crown Court cases, this is my theory anyway. Now, usually jurors are selected at complete and total random, and they only do a criminal check or certain checks in certain cases in certain circumstances. This will usually be at the Crown Court anyway for more serious offences. Now, the thing is, though, that the jury, traditionally, the jurats are meant to be elected by vote, right? And if it's elected by vote, it goes on the pure opinion. The basis of the jury making a decision in Magna Carta is by law or opinion, regardless of law. So when you're electing them, you elect the jury based on law, whether they've broken the law or not, or your opinion. So really purely on your opinion, which doesn't have to be based on law. That's what the jury use when they're making decisions. So surely when you're electing them, it can be based on your opinion. So why are the police and the CPS and courts, disqualifying people from being jurors? Now, if jurats are equal to magistrates, or so they claim, or to justices of the peace, right, you can challenge a jury. Now, the points you can challenge them on are bias, right, the entire panel, or individual jurors, right, but before they're sworn in. But traditionally, jurats are already sworn in when they turn up because it's a permanent position, like the judge. So, riddle me that. Now, on the next point, right, what about the entire panel of the jury, if you challenge them, right, what happens if they'd all been indoctrinated by speed awareness courses? What happens if that jury panel had all been indoctrinated by speed awareness courses and made to be pro, and anti-speeding, right? Yet, in politics, anyone can vote for what laws they want on the road or vote to get the laws changed on the road, like in 20 mile an hour in Wales. So how can you have a jury who might want to seek in the ballot box opposing 20 mile an hour speed limits or any other speed limit, right, with free opinion, if they've been indoctrinated by the police in speed awareness courses to be pro more speed limits? That's affecting them in the ballot box. So it's going to be affecting them in the jury for sure. Now, what happens if you've got justices, magistrates who have been working with the police to devise, circuit, plan, and the sheriffs to tend to their needs, and set up all these cameras and speeding locations and sites, not only in their local area, but all around the country. And the justices have been involved in planning the speed awareness courses. And the police have set up these signs with the local council and purposely put them misleadingly wrong and unlawful, or even not even a speed limit, when the traffic regulation order is national speed limit, but the signs say 50. So the signs aren't even correct. And what happens when you've got that all over at key places like, all up the A1 major roads, on major motorways around Manchester like the M60, on dual carriageways that you come off the motorway at, on country roads, at junctions, and you've gone around all these places and you find a pattern which must have been planned, cannot be by accident. The incompetence required for it to be by accident would be that there were no regulations at all, but there are meant to be regulations and people have got qualifications to do it, right? No, exactly where this place is where a police van comes to park so many times a week to catch people speeding, yet the signs there are configured unlawfully and misleading to drivers in a particular way, whereas to make it look like the speed limit is a different speed limit, or to trick or otherwise throw you off. And they're collecting a lot of fines there. We find this here, there, Cambridgeshire, Bedfordshire, Nottinghamshire, Lancashire, Yorkshire, Shropshire, right? And there are so many of these places, particularly at these sites, where a police inspector is meant to have been there to check that it conforms to the law, but it doesn't. So when I come into a court before a magistrate and I've heard that they have been planning the speed awareness courses as well to indoctrinate citizens who might appear on juries who might be biased for pro or against speeding and other matters, biased in the public, when the public might seek through the ballot box to vote against these laws anyway and get them changed, be opposed to them, right? How can anyone who's been to a speed awareness course turn up on a jury panel and not be biased when they've been indoctrinated? Now, it's true that all jurats are meant to be they take an oath to obey the law, right? And to make judgment by the law. But when you who votes for the... When you vote for the Jurats, it's a free, open process to vote for who you want, and when they make decisions, they can ignore the law, right? So, when they say they try the case according to the evidence, right? According to the evidence, not according to what the law is. Another ironic thing is that apparently they've got these offences now. I think the jury are meant to be protected against anything that will incriminate them if they've committed offences separate from the proceedings. I think they've got immunity, but if they're being vetted by the police, then they're not going to choose people who broke the law, right? Which is kind of odd, really. Why would you need the immunity? You know, but then they've got all these offences now, like, you know, a jury is not allowed to research the case or research the participants or research the law even. But if a juror can make a decision on the case that doesn't have to be based on the law, they can ignore it and have their own opinion, why would it matter whether the jury research the law or not? And that's another thing that I've said this before. The thing with Extinction Rebellion and a lot of the other cases, the Extinction Rebellion cases are a public remonstration, a public writ, or a cause to the government, which is being taken to the government, and it is a patent. A patent means that it is open, an open letter, a declaration. Letters patent are usually open for everyone to read and see. That is why those charters are by letters patent, because it's a declaration to the town. Letters patent are a declaration to the people. So when you write a petition with a grievance to the government and get the public to sign it with evidence to prove it and support it, it's patent because it's open to the public. Therefore, if any jury or anyone see it, they know about it and they're informed about it. So how you could end up with a case in a court for Extinction Rebellion or Insulate Britain or Just Stop Oil, when those remonstrations to government, those cases, those petitions to government are patent, open to all, then jurors are likely to know about them already, right? You don't need to research it because it's already been declared to everyone and all, right? Come sign the petitions, see the evidence, right? This is why local courts really aren't supposed to try petition cases, or not actually the people who are... The Tumultuous Petitioning Act 1661, if it was 20 people, you don't go to court anyway. It's to be heard by Parliament, right? So the offence in the local courts was only getting too many people to sign it without it being inspected first. Now, if it's going to be inspected first, it's inspected by the grand jury, right? And they're supposed to know about it because it's a civil case and not a criminal one. It's a civil case to the government that is patent, open, and they want to pursue authorization to tell more people about it, to get more people, to let everyone know about it, including all and any Jurats, right? And that's a civil case. So how you could be in a criminal position with Jurats there judging any of those matters and not allowed to research it, when the whole point of the proceeding is to get consent from the Jurats to tell everyone about it, is beyond me, you know. Also here, whilst the omission of disqualified person from the panel is a matter for the court officials, only the police are able to search criminal records in order to ascertain whether a jury or panel includes a disqualified person. This is part of their usual function, preventing the commission of offences, where the practice of vetting jurors by checking their criminal records was approved by the Court of Appeal. Right. Well, what about checking the offences of judges, justices, and police by having a criminal network of illegal road signage around England in order to mislead with intent drivers to strike people off jury lists, make them into criminals, so then good, honest citizens have been misled, labelled criminals for life, disqualified from participating in justice, right? Received fake and fraudulent letters accusing them of crimes in the post when no event, crime took place or came to pass. It is a pure fabrication on paper, a fictional account of an event that never happened, issued by a chief police officer, right? Now, if that ain't crime, if that's not criminal, I don't know what is. Now, if that doesn't disqualify the police chief from being a police chief, if it doesn't disqualify, Sir Peter Fye stood down at the time, and the last police and crime commissioner I knew from that area has just popped his clogs, and George Galloway's replaced him as an MP, right? So, and then, you've got the oath that's been broken, being offered discounts on fines and not a fair trial in order for confessions without being judged fairly by your peers, regardless of the rule of law and depending on their opinion or not, because they remove the juries from magistrates' courts. What we've got is police chiefs racking up criminals from good, honest citizens, and not only disqualifying them from being good citizens, making money for the government out of it as well. And then they've vetting juries when the entire magistrate circuits and the entire police force are automatically disqualified. At least the traffic department, the highways department. I'm not saying that all police officers are bad. There are a lot of good police officers, but at least the ones who are associated with these cameras and locations and chief officers and a lot of the judges, particularly ones involved in those speed awareness courses, as far as I'm concerned, they were never qualified from, at least 1990. Well, they started doing all this around the time that Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves film came out, around 1990, 1991. I think they started in Hyde, in Manchester, and on London Bridge as well. London Bridge, I think, was the first one. I think some look older than that, but apparently that's when they're saying they were started putting out there. So, I mean, at least from then on, they decided that they were going to do this fast track system and bag a load of people. Unfortunately, it was corrupt from the start, and they were all automatically disqualified, as far as I'm concerned, from hearing those cases. And from even issuing notices of intended prosecution, because they're all they're getting people to depose on themselves without a fair trial. And also then they started forcing people to give statements and evidence, even though they get the right to remain silent, they were forcing people to, say they were driver or so. All these laws they introduced, a lot of them are corrupt. The Juries Act identifies those classes of disqualified. Any challenges for causes shall be tried by the judges before whom the accused is to be tried. Challenges must be lodged before the jury is sworn. Well, what about when they're already permanently sworn? And I don't know what about when you rock up in court when you've already been sworn in permanently as well, before you even got issued with your first fake or false notice of intended prosecution, which you paid a fine because you were scared and you didn't even really know what it is or what it was. You know, and why would you go to court? You know, it's just like some sort of fine. What's this? Some sort of fine? No, that's a criminal offence you're just about to admit to. Oh, I don't know what it is. I've never heard of it before. You know, some letter with a crown on the top saying, "Oh, you've got to pay a fine." If I admit that I'm guilty of this, then I'm a criminal. Yes, I committed an offence. No, it's not just a parking ticket. You know, it's a criminal offence to do that, right? You know, I should go to court and say that I'm not innocent. You know, I don't know all this important, what's all this crown on the top? Well, no, the police chief fabricated a letter. He claimed that I committed an offence when no such event happened. The event was pure fiction. You know, it was complete and pure fiction. Given to the fact that there's a nightclub in our town at Huddersfield called Changing Lights, it's an insult. It's like being slapped around the face with a glove with a golf club ball in it, or an iron. You know, these people need locking up for a long time, and there's a lot of them to lock up. You can fill Belmarsh up with these people. The whole lot of them. Any judge who has touched, even sniffed a notice of intended prosecution case where someone is defending against a notice of intended prosecution in a courtroom, anyone who has planned or had anything to do with speed awareness course, and any police officer who has held a speed measuring device, had anything to do with the installation of cameras, been to inspect sites or plan or instigate them, chief police officers needs to be disqualified, not only from the police force, needs to be tried. The whole lot of them. There needs to be an inquiry into the whole thing from day one, because the whole thing is criminal. Even without the illegal road signage, it's getting people to depend on themselves for a favour without a fair trial of their peers. Well, you can't have a fair trial. You can't have a fair trial in a magistrate's court now since the mid 1800s, because they removed the jury. So how do you get a fair trial in a magistrate's court judged by your peers? You can't. Now, if you asked for a jury, they've started sending people to the Crown Court, where you can even get, apparently in the Crown Court they scare you because they pretend that you can get get a more serious conviction, when actually you're getting judged by your peers, and you should be less afraid, because then, you know, people will actually believe you or understand, right? So they're scaring people with that, with the whole Crown Court thing, putting people off by threats of more serious offences if you ask for a jury. The whole thing's corrupt, and this hold on, burden of proof. So you've got to be able to, in order to get the jury, challenge the jury, they're claiming that you've got to do it before they take their oath, and you've got to have evidence there and then against them of why they might be biased. Jury used to be sworn in before they turn up. And what happens if the judge is biased because he's been engaged in setting up illegal road signage? And what if your main point is that the whole road signage scheme is unlawful, and you've got evidence all over, and the notice of intended prosecutions are invalid, and the judge is breaking his oath by the such offers being given in the first place? So at that point, if the judge is already sworn in, how can you disqualify the entire panel of the police force and the court if they're already sworn in before you turn up? Let alone the jury being sworn in, accusing the jury of being biased before they get sworn in. Well, if that ain't bias from the police and the judges, seeing though that they set the whole thing up, right, I don't know what is. The burden of proof is on the challenging party. Well, I had the proof because I went around and got the evidence from all around England, so I got the burden of proof. And in fact, my judge, I'd looked at my evidence, and my judge said, I quote, I have no doubts about your petition, your investigation, or its findings. So, my judge didn't doubt the findings of my investigation. So, he effectively admitted that I was right, which basically means that he agreed all the road signage around England was unlawful. So, at that point, how can he have been qualified to judge me at that point on anything, let alone the rights that I was using that were required to investigate the illegal road signage? If I didn't have any rights, I wouldn't have had the powers to investigate it, right? But yet he didn't say no such rights existed. Yet he knew they existed because he knew that assisting offenders existed, and he agreed that I was investigating something, you know, and the whole thing does exist. It's based on, well, it's the right to petition and also the act of indemnity, you know. With regards to challenges to the polls, a jury can be challenged on the grounds of bias, which would cause him to be unsuitable to try the case. For example, where he has expressed hostility to one side or connected to one side in some way. Well, how would you know that if they just walked into the room, right? How would you know that if he'd expressed anything if you had to do it before he'd been sworn in? You wouldn't, would you? This can be made either by the prosecution, a challenge to the cause, or defence, and may either be a challenge to the whole panel of jurors or to an individual juror. Challenge the polls. Whilst common law power of challenges to the array is preserved in the Juries Act 1974, it is now almost inoperative and is of historical significance only. Well, if it's still contained in there, how is it almost inoperative? That means that no one's using it. And if it's got historical significance only, why are this Crown Prosecution Service full of shit? They're so full of shit that they've got it coming out of their eyeballs and ears. If it's of historical significance only, riddle me this. Of historical significance to when? Because if you go any far back in history, right, then jurors were permanent and they didn't need to be sworn in. So you couldn't accuse them of something before they were sworn in. So if it was any historical significance only, would prove that these rules are based on bollocks. It would prove that these rules are bull. It would prove that the legislation is not only incompatible with statute law, it is in conflict with statute law, right? And the fact that the CPS lie and claim there's no such thing as immunity or privilege anyway when they're using it for their own assisting offenders when they feel like it. Challenges of the polls. Well, the thing is that they're calling it polls, but it's a random... What it is, it's a random, supposedly random selection. I don't know if they use a computer. I don't know how they... I'd love to know how they choose it. I think they choose it like the lottery choose the millionaire maker code. You know the millionaire maker code on the lottery? Like you can choose your numbers on the lottery, right? I can choose my numbers on the lottery, and if my numbers come out, I win, right? But the millionaire maker code, no one knows how that's chosen. They won't even show us the computer or the process. It's secret. I'd love to know how they're choosing these jurors. And then the police or the CPS are challenging them and giving checks and vetting people, right? Yet, traditionally, you elect the jurats in an election, right? Maybe if they have committed an offence or crime, you know, maybe they are omitted then. I'm not sure. But those offences or crimes that they committed, in turn, would be being fairly judged by other jurors. So all of the people, if anyone was eligible to be a juror, to be voted for, they were only eligible because they'd been in front of a jury and had been judged by their peers, either on rule of fact of law, through a lawful process, or purely on the opinion of the peers. So you've got to go through a fair process in order to get to a point where you can or cannot be on a jury. Well, no such thing has happened because there is no juries in magistrates' courts. So if you've been prosecuted in magistrates' court, you ain't even had a jury to judge you. So, riddle me that. And no one voted for no judge. No one voted for the judge or mayor. No one voted for any of those judges. No one votes for judges now. So riddle me how the justice got in and got voted for. Because capable unsuitable. So that's that. Now another thing that I want to talk about. So another thing we'll talk about is the local council. Now, the civil courts, the courts of civil requests, the civil courts, whether it was the hundreds or the assizes or quarter sessions, you can have civil matters through all the courts. The civil courts made decisions on building and planning, right? If you can build a house or so forth, and for maintenance of the streets and so forth, right? We've got all the evidence from the from National Archives. Have got all the minute books of the courts and the hundreds, some of the hundreds records as well. They've got cases that are heard before a court with a jury and by petition where it's concerning streets, right? Now, if those cases are getting heard with a court and possibly by a jury who've been voted and elected in, right? Well, that means that it's kind of a little bit like the council, isn't it? Because you vote councillors in, right? It's not a random jury, each time different. It's like a jury who've been voted in because the majority of the people in the village wanted those people to be Jurats. That's exactly the same as councillors. Councillors are elected by a majority vote and usually remain in place for like so many years, right? But the thing is that you're meant to be able to petition freely for who you want to be councillor, who you want to nominate, right? It's not like who's on the ballot. You can choose from, Rod, Jane and Freddie. Because that's not, you aren't nominating who you want to vote for. Someone else is nominating it. So you're choosing from, if someone plants 3 people and so you can choose from these 3. No. You nominate people, right? You nominate whoever you want. And whoever nominates, whoever gets the most nominations is elected, right? So that's really how councillors are voted in, right? But it would have been as if you turn up at the polling station and vote and you can write down who you want in the village, right? Not like whoever's on the paper, you can tick a box, you can vote for who you want, right? So you'd be getting councillors who the majority of people voted for, not who were presented to you, right? Which is what's happening now in America on these tickets. But the American Constitution was done so it could be anyone. So if you think of your councillors, and if you think, let's pretend it's less corrupt as it is now, and let's pretend that you went in and the councillors were elected from whoever people wrote down, not from whoever appeared on the paper, right? Whoever we wrote down, right? So that would really be the jury, right? Because you got the mayor, the recorder, and the Jurats who are voted and elected. So that is effectively like the model for the council now, really. So really, if you see the council now is what the court was like, right? If you've got all your councillors there, like if you've got like 12 councillors or however many, let's say it's a small village, right, or a small town, let's see. So or even if there's more, like from all the councillors, there was just a selection of them, like 12 of them from, if there were 30 of them, like 12 at random from the 30, right? So it would be like that, from what I've read. If I'm wrong, then, let me know. So, but the court currently isn't like that. Because, firstly, and that would be for criminal matters as well as civil matters. That would be for so what would happen is really, when you go into the council now, right? When you go into the council and you are opposing a planning, someone's making a case to get something built. I want to build a house, right? And if you don't want them to build a house, you go into court, but it's a council, right? And you say, we don't think we should build it. But you can also take a petition in. But you can also have a referendum where everyone votes on it. Now, the councillors are the jury. And the chairman of the council is the Justice of the Peace, right? And then you've got a recorder, right? It was meant to be the legal advisor, blah, 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 right? So we meant to have elected those councillors, that jury. So really, you're kind of having a jury there. And that's really what this court's supposed to be like for civil procedure and for criminal as well. But we've elected those. It's like your councillors. If you can imagine now the councillors that you voted for and you go into court, and if you committed a crime, can you imagine being judged by your councillors, right? Would you want your councillors to judge you in there? Now, the ironic thing is, in the council, this is the mind bender, right? They're supposed to act selflessly, which means they can't have an opinion of their own. How could you have a jury come out with a verdict if they don't have an opinion? Because a jury can have its own opinion. It has to have an opinion. That's how it comes out with a verdict, with its opinion. If you've got a jury there, right, it listens to the evidence and the jury come out with an opinion, like an Ian Bray case. If the jury was selfless, it wouldn't have its own opinion. But it needs an opinion to have a conscience, so it can't function, right? Now, the councillors are actually effectively the jury, right? But for council matters. But the mind bender is that they have to act selflessly. Why? Because each of the councillors, in brackets, Jurat, are meant to only speak and talk going by the constituents which each of them represent. So, one councillor, I know that if they're voted in by Labour, right, they act on the premise that in their constituency, Labour have the prerogative and the majority. But that's only supposed. So, really, in every different matter that goes through the council, if you asked all of the people to cast a vote on it, you would get a wide different range of responses depending on, what they thought and whether it affected them or not, or whether it affected them immediately. What you'd find is that if it was something to do with them or their building or their area or their immediate surrounding and they weren't too keen on what was proposed, they would definitely vote against it. But if it didn't really bother them and it was someone else, they probably wouldn't be that interested in it, right? So you always have an opinion if it affects you. The ironic thing on the jury is that apparently if only one person disagrees, then you can't do it. So I don't know what happens when you turn up in a council to oppose a planning thing and only one person turns up to oppose it, like with a wind turbine, regardless of rule of law or completely your opinion, like, I just object to it, right? That's from Magna Carta. Now, the thing is that really, if you vote for, say, Labour, right? But what is Labour? Well, it's a load of things written down that they say they're going to do, right? So if you vote for a councillor who's Labour and people vote for loads of councillors who are Labour, right? And then they get into the council and they say, oh, we want to do this or that, right? But you might not want them to do particular things. They've just said generally they've got policies, right? But what you'll find is people will still object to certain things. And if this is the main mind bender of the whole thing for me when it comes down to political parties is this. And this will, Keir Starmer, it will literally blow his light bulb out, right? Because this is like next level retardedness, and not my retardedness. This is like next level dumb, right? If you've got a political party who have got policies and members of the party, and there are policies for that party, and let's say that you vote for that party, right? Immediately, once elected, those councillors don't have an opinion because they're selfless. That's the policy of the council to be selfless. So, if every councillor is selfless, how can it have any policies? How can any councillor hold any policies if it's a requirement to be selfless? Because immediately all party policies are null because that person is selfless. So he can't have any policies. So any policies or opinion whatsoever can only be in the electorate's opinion. Now, if you suppose they voted for Labour because they like their policies, but the policies aren't in the councillor, so how can any councillor have control of a council, or how can every political party have control of a council when none of the councillors have an opinion because they're selfless? They can't have any control. No political party headquarters can have control of a council because all of the councillors are selfless. So where's the handle on the councillors between the councillors and the political party headquarters? There is no handle because they're selfless. So the hold on the councillor is only from the electors. Now, those electors, a majority might have pledged an allegiance to a certain party, but that means nothing because in any given council decision, they might differ in opinion. Oh, I support Labour, but oh no, not those policies. If it's going to be next to my house, no, or not my friends, no. But if it's them people over there, then no, I don't mind. When they don't have a say, they don't have a say, and when they do have a say, they do have a say. Now, when people do have a say, it goes down to majority, so it's constantly fluxing and changing in opinion, depending on what the particular matter is, right? But there's also the basis of the jury that if one person objects, then you don't do it. You don't convict, or you don't approve planning, which is the basis of the wind turbine, or the singular wind turbine, right? On that basis, one objector to a planning approval would fail it. And it doesn't have to be on point of law. It can be just on the fact that they just oppose it anyway. So I can't see how you can have control of a council through councillors. It's impossible. And how you can disregard a public consultation is also impossible by Magna Carta, which is still in effect. It's legally impossible to do it, And I don't know how we've ended up with these juries that are chosen by a random poll, because that's not a select committee. Ironically, Parliament do have select committees. They're selected. Apparently that goes by votes. But all of the MPs are selected because someone proposed them to be on the ballot and put them forward for that party. Yet we're meant to be the ones who nominate. I nominate this person, you nominate that person by petition, right? at some point, the political parties started to get people to support them. Oh, why don't you support our party? Support us. Our man will sort it out. Come on, put your trust in our man. Back our man. All right, then I'll vote for him. Back our man. Our team. Look, here's the ticket. Trust, come on, Man United, come on, vote for our team. Here's the ticket. And they're writing these tickets out saying mayor, police chief, councillor, president, and you go around and you pick their ticket up. Come on, that's the ticket. Come around here, pick our ticket up. And then they just, I don't know what to vote for. Oh, go on then. Come on. They got people, and this is the basis behind football. Behind football teams. This is the basis behind getting all the coat of arms on the football clubs and the champs and the Beckhams and the whole thing, and then everyone ends up watching them, eating donuts, out of shape and, chanting and cheering. And then you end up with Barry Shearman and the, posh people up in the VIP box, if you're lucky, watching all the mud and the action go around on the pitch, watching all the action, watching the police chief chase the criminals around, all the action going on the pitch is actually all the action around the town centre. They're in the command centre, in the town centre, in the VIP council suite, watching the police chase all the poor people that they've made poor, because they fleeced them all and robbed them and nicked all the money and built the, the Emerald City. And then they're watching the police chase all the poor people around that they've been filling in with concrete and giving shit wages and making nice things crap, from their, VIP lounge. That's effectively what they've done, and then they've, started giving, selling tickets, literally dishing tickets out to everyone. Dream team. Well, it's a dream for them, not for everyone else, But, if you think living the dream is, turning up in a magistrate's court without getting fair judgment from anyone, let alone anyone you've elected, it'd be something if you could get a judgment from the councillors. But they're the ones who've been dishing out parking tickets to everyone, Oh, look, just the jury I wanted. The council who have been dishing out parking tickets and fixing the illegal road signs and illegal parking signs with the misleading writing on the parking signs. Just the jury that I wanted, It would be something if they were selfless and actually turning up in the jury with an opinion that even wasn't theirs, that was actually the people's opinion, So the whole thing's gone. They've been slowly chipping away. First it's like, it's the liberty of the city, the liberty of London, our customs and laws and your privileges and freedoms. Now you're in the freedom of the city. You don't have to worry about those thugs in the forest. There's brigands in the woods, don't worry about those, highwaymen stand and deliver, the sheriff behind the tree with a speed gun, now you're in the liberty of the city, and all you've got to worry about is, ULEZ charges or smog charges or parking fines. So much for liberty, We're being fleeced. They took away the juries from the magistrates' courts around 1848. Baden-Powell came back with starting to swear cubs in, somewhat, but then they took away the civil juries fully in 1933 around then. And now then they've been setting up roadside traps for us all to get disqualified from being regarded as good citizens. It's we're being fleeced. And that's after they've was encouraging them to go digging up our treasures out of our own lands, our own ancestors' treasures, and then probably selling them all. I think they've got that. That's that scene in Fagin, isn't it, in Oliver Twist? That Fagin's got all the treasure, hasn't he, in that box? He hides it in the box. They were persuading people to go treasure hunting all through from 1200 to 1600, I think that's why all the ancient sites are dug out now. They were persuading people. They promised that they could keep it. But I think that if once word got out about anyone finding anything worth anything, I think they'd then be straight down with the key to the city and through the back door with the sheriff, sketchy, dodgy, or, trading it for some, I don't know, the mystery merchants or whatever, they're melting them down. So I think we've been plundered. We've been well and truly plundered. You've been plundered when they rock up, Doomsday, and say, "Oh, your farm's only worth, your farm's like, that's not a farm, that's half a farm, or whatever." We're being fleeced by these people, fleeced of our health, fleeced of our knowledge, history. Ancient mathematics of Stonehenge, longitude and latitude, all these things. We've been well and truly fleeced of everything, including our health now. And we need to stop these people because we're just being tricked and swindled. And people don't even know what the fuck's going on. They're even, now when there's political causes, they're even hijacking other people's political causes to use for their own ends and benefits. Most of these people, by law, if you follow law, these people are disqualified. These people are disqualified from sitting in courts, from being police chief officers. These people don't qualify to carry justice. A lot of them don't. A lot of these laws they're making aren't compatible with the statute law. A lot of the laws they're making are wrong, and there's loads of lies all through that Hansard as well. So, and then the worst thing is, you've got all these new corporate bodies popping up trying to claim that they've got policies where laws don't apply, when the whole point of having, they have to comply with the law. So, but they've got all these, they've got machines and devices. I'm talking into this stupid phone now. They're using deep psychology on us already. They're throwing a net over us with the web. No one's ever going to have any privacy anymore. And they've already got AI starting to assess everyone and what everyone's up to. I think we're screwed. I think we're well and truly fucked. As far as I'm concerned, MI5 and MI6 can go fuck themselves because they're fucking criminals. They've aided and abetted. They've got no special protection. MI5 and MI6 have got no special protection. They can be fucking prosecuted by any citizen. Justices, sheriffs can all be prosecuted by citizens. They've fucked us, and then they're making out that we are the threat. We are the terrorist threat, right? Yeah. Oh, I'm upholding the law. I'm upholding the law and the rules. Well, apparently they don't have to comply with it. If they don't have to abide by the rules, right, how are they upholding the law? This is the thing. So,